I'm Melissa. I'm the director of the Learning and Writing Center at Guilford College. Also a mom to a rambunctious 12-year-old boy. And uh, yeah, love my job, love my kid. That's me.
Um, when do you remember first hearing about the virus and what were your initial thoughts?
Oh my gosh. I remember I am really, I guess, addicted to the news. I watch a lot, probably too much news. So I listen to NPR pretty much every day, watch the evening news, have CNN on in the background a lot. So I was trying to remember when I heard about it. It was early. It was early on, but I remember hearing about it and specifically about Wuhan and initially being really concerned because from Ebola and other outbreaks of things around the world, I knew that just because it was in Wuhan, China, that didn't mean that it was going to stay in China. And also being really concerned about the people there and how horrible it sounded.
Yeah, I actually heard about it on NPR, like the morning edition, for the first time, and I remember it.
Yeah, yeah, it stuck in my brain.
Yeah. Um, when did you kind of like realize like how serious this was going to be?
Oh, it was sometime in January. I remember starting to talk to my friends who were also uh, who watch too much news, and are in all sorts of different professional careers. One of my friends, in our friends group, is a geneticist, and a lot of his work is out of China. And so I think for that reason, it really we became aware earlier because he was getting the news from China, right, and from Asia, and all the concerns and he was worried. And when he gets worried, we get worried.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What was the first, well, when and what was the first effect the, not necessarily the pandemic, but COVID-19 had on your life?
Well, I remember hearing when it jumped over and we became aware that it was in Washington State, and we started finding out more about the intricacies of it and what it affected, and that it was respiratory. Then I started getting immediately worried. I have a mother who has COPD. She's on oxygen 24 hours a day, has multiple health problems. And knowing that it was affecting that age group and that it was respiratory and that it was now here and how fast it got here, knowing it wasn't going to take long for it to get from Washington to the East Coast. Um, yeah, I got alarmed pretty early.
What have been the largest changes COVID-19 has made on your individual and professional life?
Um, a lot. My son went on spring break last year, and of course, Guilford went on spring break at the same time. And first, I heard from his school that they weren't coming back after break for a couple of weeks. They were going to have a couple of weeks extended break or working at home. And so I was like, oh, okay, this will be really challenging with my work schedule and trying to make sure he keeps up with school. And then it became clear as Guilford spring break ticked day after day, and we kept every day there were emails just swirling. And finally, it became clear that we weren't coming back either. I was relieved because I was like, oh, good. For these couple of weeks of quarantine, I can now be at home with my son, um, take care of his schooling, and but then also on a personal level, I'm thinking, well, this is great because I have asthma. He has asthma. He and I both have other health conditions on top of the asthma. So I'm thinking, well, this will be. I really feel good about this because I know I can keep him safe. I can keep me safe. Um, and then it was a whirlwind of, oh my gosh, I have to figure out how to still get all the assistance and support to the students. And how am I going to do that? I don't know. Fortunately, we already had some online tutoring happening, just tiny bits of it here and there. It was a relatively unused component of our scheduling platform that we use. And so Selena, my coworker, and I were like, "Oh, thank goodness, we can still provide our services, and we don't have to search for a way to do that. We already have a way to do it." So that was great. That was relieving. That made the switch for us easier in some ways. But then immediately after that, the horrific news about furloughs began, and we started losing our coworkers, and we started losing staffing in our department. And so just as we were able to continue services for our students, we were losing people, and realizing too that people are now furloughed, worried about my coworkers, worried about their families, worried about their health, worried about them being able to pay their bills, um, all of that. And that continued all the way through the summer. So on a personal level, relieved that I was privileged to stay home and still work, still have a job, and take care of my son. But also reeling for months and months and months with all the effects that was having on the institution that I was working for, and institutions like mine all over the country. Like my colleagues across the country were losing jobs and positions and staff, and it was just a nightmare. But also realizing at the same time that many of us, we were still privileged in many ways. I mean, still able to hold on to housing and that kind of stuff, but realizing other people weren't. Um, and so it really was kind of like holding my breath for all the way through August, trying to figure out what are we going to do in the fall for Guilford? What are we going to how are we going to take care of students? How are we going to serve students? Are we going to be able to keep our doors open as an institution? Am I going to have a job? Am I going to be able to keep a roof over my child's head? I'm a single parent. So if I don't work, there's a problem. There's nothing but problems. And then, he and I have health issues. If I lose my income, if I lose my housing, if I lose my health insurance, he loses his health insurance. Then, so all of that since March of last year has been, not just for me, but for everybody I know, has been a problem. So in some ways, I've weathered this well. My family are all healthy, and they're COVID free. Many of us now have vaccines, but at the same time, I think at this point it's just absolute sheer exhaustion, emotional exhaustion, and physical exhaustion. I just spoke to my best friend. One of my best friends lately has been the guy at Starbucks, who thankfully I have a Starbucks around the corner. And I often sprint over there in the mornings because I have back-to-back Zooms all day. And so if I don't get a venti, I'm going to be in trouble. And I shared with him the other day. He goes, "Wow, what's it been like to work at home? Has that been relaxing?" And I was like, "Well, let me tell you. I mean, all respect to him. I mean, he's been out working during this whole thing, right, with a mask on. Like, yes." I said, "I know." I said, "But I'm on back-to-back Zooms all day, most days, which means, and then getting my son in his Zooms. That means that then my emails aren't checked all day. So I spend all night trying to check my emails. But then that means that also all day long, I haven't been able to help my son with his assignments. He has several learning issues, disabilities. So then if I'm not there with him, he can't do many of those things. It's 10 o'clock at night. He hasn't even started his work yet. And then I do that again and again and again. And I spend all weekend helping him do his work so he doesn't fail. So all these people who talk about I've developed 5 hobbies during the pandemic, I can't. I just it floors me. Who are these people? I know
Yeah.
none.
So you work a lot with accommodations for students who have like accommodations for classes. How have accommodation strategies changed from the beginning of virtual classes to now?
Um, we learn every day, right? We've in that respect, the pandemic, and the pandemic has taught us some cool stuff, right? It has these Zoom meetings are in some ways really good for accessibility. Um, for our students with multiple health issues, not having to schlep across campus physically and still be able to participate in their classes. That kind of thing, I hope we get the stuff we've learned as we've adapted day by day with this thing is the stuff that I hope we hang on to and we don't throw out the minute that things reopen. Um, we need to provide a virtual um, participation option for people. I myself, with my health issues and things, I've been able to do all kinds of cool Zoom professional development stuff that financially I couldn't have done before. And physically, I didn't have the energy to do before. I've done some cool professional, like a 1 hour jump on Zoom, and I can talk to colleagues of mine all over the country. I couldn't do that before. So, that kind of stuff we need to provide for students moving forward. We need to provide students not just with a means to continue participating in their classes um, when they're physically not able, or emotionally, if it's just a better place for them to be at home that day, but they can still Zoom in, maybe with their camera off, but they can still get more participation that way. But also, for us, uh, faculty and staff too, like that we have access to more stuff if we can continue keeping the best pieces of this moving forward. So I think what it's taught us overall, faculty too, is that we can make things more accessible than we thought we could. And it can, in some ways, be easier than we thought it was.
What difference have you seen between adjustments to accommodations for first year students versus upperclassmen who had already been at Guilford? Like, how have they handled it?
Um, I will say a lot of it's been the same. Our concern with our first years, though, oh my goodness, what we're really realizing now that we're almost through the spring semester is how much they've lost. That they didn't get um, that, even though, and it's a weird contradiction, right? In some ways, they had more access to their classes this way through Zoom, but in a lot of ways, they had less. So they've lost access to, for a lot of them, that social aspect of learning inside the classroom was not able to be replicated um, virtually, or even in the small little bit of, like in-person stuff we were able to do. So that our entire first year class, and I don't think it's just us, I think it's every school, has lost that cohesiveness. Like, I've tried to talk to my students this semester, my first years, um, you know, meet with a study group. Well, I can't do that. Well, meet with a study group on Zoom. Do it that way. Well, I don't know anybody. They've spent so much time that they've had to be in their rooms, and that we haven't really had, nearly as much campus life, particularly campus life geared to first years, to get them acquainted with each other, but also to get them to know you all, to get them to know the upperclassmen. They don't know people. And so they're really, really isolated. And that has affected their education tremendously. It's affected, and for our students who have physical and psychological and learning disabilities, it's really affected their support, right? They don't have the type of support community that we know we've been able to put in place in person. We were not as able to replicate that this year. And so I think our first years, I feel so badly for them. Like, They didn't sign up for this, right? I mean, I feel badly for you all too. I feel badly for the upperclassmen, particularly,
Yeah, I
seniors.
get it. Yeah.
Yeah, seniors also. Seniors all, first years and seniors. I think, seniors have seen their entire everything they thought their last year would be just gone. Like, graduation, all the serendipity. I know we had serendipity, but it's not quite the same that our seniors would have been anticipating, particularly for their last year. And like there's so many of those things that they've lost. And as far as the accommodations, uh, we've tried, but we also lost staff too, right? We lost staff in the tutoring center. We lost staff in the accessibility center, and we have tried, and I feel like my impression is, and also what I'm seeing from just looking at the data that's been coming in, we maintained a baseline, but we know the work that we want to do is not just maintaining the baseline. We want to go above and beyond. We want to keep every year working toward full accessibility, full inclusivity. And in some ways, Zoom and all that, we made some unanticipated moves in that direction. But then it was like we gained in that area, but then we lost in others. And I don't know yet. I think it's on a case by case basis whether that balanced out or not.
Yeah. I remember like at the hotline, like the most often we had parents call, it was like parents of first years. And I would always be like, yeah, no, I like feel like so bad for the first years. I don't think I could have handled this when I was 18, 19. Like, and I tell them that whenever I talk to them on the phone. I'm like, I'm really sorry you're having to deal with this. This sucks.
Yeah.
Like, it just does. So, is there anything else you would like to add?
Oh, thank you for doing this. I think this is fantastic that you have taken this on as a personal project. I love the way you've documented it, and I just appreciate that we have this record and that you've put the energy into it.
Thank you. Okay. Well, that is it.
Okay.
Have a good day.
You too. I'll talk to you soon.